Good morning, New Home. Good morning. Welcome to our first parent workshop. I am so excited. You guys ready? You sure? Now, y'all gonna be up and moving. This is not a talk for us to talk to you. We're talking with you, okay? All of us are parents, whether our kids are 5 or 25. We are always learning about how to parent, how to change different reactions or different behaviors. So once again, we're doing this with you, okay? It's so amazing how God works. 2 of our ministries had the same concept. And when we start talking, we realize this is something that we can join in together to do. So the women's ministry and the youth department have decided to do this effort of helping parents connect with their kids. I am so ready to see what we can do throughout this year, and I know that our pastor has a bigger goal at some point that he'll introduce that he wants to do with families. We have an amazing set of professionals here. So one thing that we are good at in New Home, we like to embrace, empower, and employ. So now we're going to employ people that are in our church to do something to help others within our church and our community. The first thing we're going to do tonight or today is a warm-up icebreaker. If you know me, I love to get up, move around. So you guys are going to pair up. All right. We'll let the husband and the wife, they're going to pair up together. If you two can pair. All right. You two will pair. And how about I'll be your partner. Okay. So I'm going to come to you all, and I'm going to give you a task. One of you have to write the steps down how to do the task, okay? So if it takes 3 steps to get there, I need 3 steps. Those steps will go directly to our professionals. The other one, you have no idea what this task is, how to do it. So if I say your task is to feed the dog, okay? You have your 3 steps. Your partner is supposed to explain without speaking, without using verbal, without using words on how to complete that task. Does that make sense? All right. A minute to write your steps down, okay? And bring your steps up here to the professionals so that they can have them. So we know part of our relationships with our kids and just anybody, there are always instructions, right? All right. And there's sometimes several ways to do things, but as parents, we like things done our way. Our way. That's the best way. We know a little more than they do. All right. So my group that had the changing oil, can you guys come up first? All right, so this is their steps, and she has to do it exactly that way. Okay. Now, the person who wrote the steps down, You cannot say anything. All right? Kind of maybe gesture or whatnot, but changing oil. So without using words, I need you to tell us how, or to teach us how to change the oil. Okay? You was changing it, or you was adding some? Okay, that's cool. So what was her first step? Okay, what was the second step? Okay, kind of got that one somewhere. And third? Okay, you knew a little song. All right, thank you guys. All right, my next group, braiding hair. All right, so you wrote the steps. So you will have to show us, without using words, how to braid hair. Hold on, are we turning the head? That's what you're doing? Okay. You gotta turn the head? Okay, what was the steps that was written? Oh, Lord. Okay. So with this group, did the task get done by what Deacon Durham was doing? Okay, ultimately it got done. It just did not get done the way that Cole had written down. Okay, cool, I like that. All right, have a seat. The next group. And washing the car. Now, y'all live together, so I hope you know exactly how she washed the car. There you go. Okay, what was that? You spraying it? Okay, and where's your bucket? Okay, gotcha. All right. What was her steps? Fill the bucket with water and soap. Okay. Lick the sponge. Okay, I saw you do that. I saw the... Wash the car, rinse, and dry. I stopped you. Okay. Okay, that was good. Y'all live together, that's why. She watch you. She doesn't do it. Okay. Y'all, communication is so important. Something that I learned, I have a 14-year-old, and communication with him, Lord. I like things to be done in the morning. So before he goes to school, I need the dog fed, I need that room cleaned, that bed made. I want all that done. But my son likes to get up 15 minutes before it's time for us to leave. So that's enough for him to throw his clothes on, hopefully brush his teeth, and get out. And for the longest, it was this combative morning. Jordan, do this. Jordan, do it. You forgot. And on the drive to school, we're fussing about something that was supposed to be done in my eyes. I had to learn that's not how he works. So I let him get up that 15 minutes before he gets himself ready how he chooses. And now that drive to school is, how's things going? Mama, can I pray? Oh, I have a test today. Because I didn't throw my expectations on him, so now he's able to be who he needs to be for his start. So when he gets out of school, guess what happens? He goes and make up my bed. I try to make sure the dog gets fed if he forgets. I don't want anybody calling the police on me, okay? But then he's able to leave school, come home, and then take care of his responsibilities. Now, I'm not mad when I go to work. He's not mad when he goes to school, and we're a better household for that. So this is why we're here. I gave you guys a packet, and we're not going to go through it. In my field, professionally, I work with people with mental illness and ID. And one thing that we do each year is try to figure out what's working for them and what's not. What's a good day for them? What's a bad day? I urge you, and you can call me, email me, to go through these pages. Find out when your child's having a really good day, write down what they were doing. What happened? What time they woke up? What they eat for breakfast? Those are key things. And when they're having a bad day, write those things down. So you can kind of figure out what's causing these bad days and what's causing these good days, so we can hopefully have more good days than bad. It's about 6 pages. Like I said, take your time, go home. You can go through these pages. Even after this talk, if you need to ask me questions, I am more than welcome to go through these with you all. Now we will start with the professionals. They can introduce themselves. Once again, we are not talking to you. We're talking with you, okay? They're going to tell you kind of what they do and what their topic will be, and we're going to begin to ask questions and have dialogue.
Good morning. I'm Shamika Seaborn. This year I've taken on a new position in my school system. I'm an administrator, but for 11 years I've been a school counselor as well as been a teacher 7 years before then. My topic is school behavior. All of our topics, they connect in some way, but that is my topic. So I'll give it on to the next.
Good morning. My name is Cicely Hooten, and I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And so my role is to basically see patients on a daily basis, talk with them, diagnose them, and when necessary, heard me say when necessary, prescribe medications and then manage those.
Good morning. My name is Kimberly Pruitt. I am an administrator. I've been a teacher, a school principal, and I work with teachers on a daily basis or staff on a daily basis with employment for my school district. And today I will focus more on the relationship between home, school, and church.
Good morning. My name is Parental Jenkins, and I am the Director of Research and Sponsored Programs at a local university. And my topic today is coping mechanisms for parents.
So I have a question to kind of start things. And we'll step in the camera view. As parents, what is the first thing that you do when it's time to correct your child? And I know we're in a time frame of gentle parenting and different things. So how do you navigate when that moment is, do I continue to allow them to have this behavior and figure out this behavior is negative, or do I step in right then? So as parents, when do you do that? Remember, we're talking. Bring the mics to you guys, okay?
I step in right then. Well, I have 2 children. One, I can step in right then and correct. The other one, I have to go at a slower pace and give him the why. And I know my mom, older generation, why are you letting them explain stuff to you? But I believe new age, dealing with him, he has to know the why behind something. Why am I correcting him? Why is it wrong? He just wants to know why.
And I'm gonna ask Ms. Shamika, you are in the school system, and I know a lot of times you're talking with the kids and maybe with the parents. Do they come up with that, well, they're always questioning me, that why?
That is correct. I deal with that daily. Even when we're correcting our babies, they'll ask, well, why? And I know, as Tiffany stated, the older generation's like, whatever, because I said so, basically. But nowadays, you really you need to, not do have to, but you need to explain to the children why. Because sometimes they just say, well, I'm getting scolded for nothing. In their eyes, it's nothing. It's little bitty. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do this to me. Tell them why. I have a 10-year-old. He's so different from my other two who are 17 and 21. Very different. I have to explain to him why I'm getting on to him or why I'm correcting him. So yes, I have some parents who I've had conferences with, and they may say to me, Miss Seaborn, they're always asking why. They act like they don't understand. Just because I'm telling them, and I have to break it down to them. As much as we want to say, because I said so, we have to go a little further with this generation.
You.
So I think it's important that we work with our families on prioritizing communication. Okay. Children have a voice as well. And we have to listen and we have to hear them out. A lot of times we think because we're the adults, they don't have to give us a rationale behind or ask us the why questions. But I believe as educators, that's what we teach our children. We teach them to be inquiry learners. We teach them to investigate. And so as parents, I think we have to work with our children on how to properly and effectively communicate. And then when the why questions come up, we won't feel offended or we won't feel that they've done something wrong. So I think prioritizing communication, and that's within the school as well, because believe it or not, we have teachers that feel like students shouldn't ask why questions. We do have teachers in the classroom that feel like if I said it, that's what it is. But I do believe that we have to assist our children in knowing how to effectively ask those questions, and that's just through prioritizing communication.
And I got a particular question for you, Cicely, but go ahead.
One more thing. I noticed that there are some students who have social anxiety. Mm-hmm. That's because we don't communicate. We don't take time to communicate with our children. Giving them that why is communication. You may need to sit down at home at the dinner table or just asking them how their day went. Communicate, because you'll be amazed at how much you find out about your own kids. I was very guilty of that. It wasn't until my child told me, Mommy, I'm afraid to talk to people. And I was like, why? Why are you afraid? It's because I wasn't sitting down. I was a young mom just running, just trying to handle business, and didn't see that I was not sitting there talking to my child, even at such a young age. As Tiffany said, you have a baby, a younger one. Even at that age, you have to communicate. That's teaching them how to communicate with others, because what we're seeing in the school nowadays, kids don't know how to communicate with each other. But it starts from home. We have to teach them in a way to communicate. Therefore, when they have those problems with their peers, they can effectively solve the problem. Because we're teaching a lot of conflict resolution in the schools because the kids don't know how to communicate.
And the truth, a lot of the adults, we see this in our job. We don't know how to do community. We know how to communicate correctly. Sister Cicely, what are some diagnoses that you see when kids are shut down, kids do not have an avenue to express themselves? What can happen to them mentally? And I know we mentioned social anxiety. Can you explain exactly what social anxiety may look like, or any other diagnosis that you may have seen?
Sure. And I'm going to do it. I'm not a public speaker by far. So I want to address some points that were said, and hopefully I'll get to those things, and if not, remind me. So when Sister Kiera mentioned she likes things a certain way before she and her son leave the house in the morning, that's wonderful. That's structure. However, when Sister Epiphany mentioned the fact how she could communicate with one child and how she could communicate with another, children aren't little cookie cutters. Each one has their own personality. When you bring in diagnoses such as social anxiety, which means they may struggle with even going to school, not communicating well, like Sister Shamika said. So you have to personalize their day. You cannot wake them up, rush, rush, rush. Number one, make sure they get a good night's sleep. You would be surprised how much rest and better eating habits can impact their cognition. They don't have that fogginess. They're not as, they can't be as attentive when they don't sleep well. With social anxiety, again, they may not have as many friends or social support. So they're already nervous about their day and what's gonna happen. So when you start in the morning putting that pressure on them, rushing them, they don't have time to, they're no different than we are. So not only social anxiety, but if they have ADHD or any type of concentration deficit, those children require a different pattern. And you have to figure out what works for them. Maybe have the daily routine written in their room, on the refrigerator. You guys go over it that weekend before. And the other part of that is when you have those plans, let them participate. Sister Epiphany and Sister Shamika said as well, let the kids have input as to what their day will be like, what their expectations are. And I think that'll help not only with communication between parents, but also as they begin their day. Did that kind of answer?
Yes.
Let me just add something as well. So as it relates to children and parents, parents have to create a work-life balance as well. So if the parents do not have a work-life balance, then how can they care for someone else when they don't care for themselves? We all have stressors of life, right? Stress is a major component of every adult's life. We're trying to make sure that the child gets home, get the homework done. But if I don't have a structured process for my life or a daily routine for my life, how can I impact what I expect for my child? And so with all that being said, parents are competing with social media, peer pressure, and at some point we have to reclaim the minds of our children. If we don't, and I'm guilty, I love TikTok. At 12 o'clock at night, I'm in my bed watching it, be late going to work, But we have to ensure what they are doing. We have all these new devices, all these mechanisms to protect our children. We have to take advantage of those mechanisms to be able to make sure that they understand why we're telling them no, why it's okay, why it's not okay to do certain things. As long as, prime example, I was watching TikTok the other night, and recently I see more parents and children on TikTok together. Now, it's not a bad thing, but it's not a great thing, but the music that they have in the background with the cuss words, with all the describing the body parts and stuff like that. And for me to see a mother and a daughter, young daughter, participate in something like that is kind of disturbing. So what are you preparing your daughter for, your child for, in the very near future?
I want to piggyback on that, and I'm going to be very transparent here. I had my daughter after graduating from high school. So it's like I went from a senior to a mom, and then I started college that next semester, okay? So throughout life, I work. And I wanted to do that because coming from a single parent home, I didn't want her to lack for anything. So looking back, I would have done parenting a lot differently. And so all of that to say, I know she felt some of my frustrations from working a lot, being stressed. And so with parents today, limit how much your children are exposed to. If you and your partner, spouse, however it may be, are having issues, try not to let the children be a part of that. Because then again, as they begin their day, they're taking the stresses of home into their school life. And you wonder why they can't concentrate? Children who are in magnet school, or I shouldn't specify that, any type of schooling. A lot of parents put pressure on them. You need to do this, you need to do that, so that you can have this career, and you can do these things. Well, why can't they just be kids? Yeah, you want them to excel, but you should not put those pressures on them because it really can impact them. I'm seeing more and more teenagers, young adults, emotional trauma is big, and it is impacting family relationships. These are the people that you might see on TikTok, Brother Purnell, who say that, you know, they have totally disassociated from their family. And it's a sad thing, but it's because of the experiences that they have had. Everybody's not raised the same way. And let me back up. With raising my daughter, I had an amazing village. You know, both sets of grandparents, sister, you know, we had all the support that we needed. And not everyone has that. So again, you don't know what these children are going through before they get to school. My sister teaches special education, the moderate to severe group. And she says it all the time, some kids have such a hard life. So why not make their journey easier, you know, in these schools? Do what you can from a parenting perspective so that they could become the best persons that they could be.
And I'll just add one more thing. You must have been reading my notes or something. So when we talk about expectations, sometimes as parents, we have these great expectations for our children. We want them to do what we did not do. We want them to go places that we did not go. However, the nuance to that is you have to somewhat lower your expectations. However, you do not lower your standards. You have the non-negotiables. You have them, you list them. Okay, now if you know your child is not the best scholar in the world, okay, but your expectations is you better bring me all A's and B's, no ifs, ands, buts about it. Okay, I'm struggling, so how do I do that? How do I get to the point where I can have the all A's and B's? That's when your standards come in place. So my standards are, you go to class every day, you behave as we say, no conduct issues, you do your homework, and you study. Those are your standards, those are your non-negotiables. But my expectations are so high, sometimes I can't see the standards for the expectations. So once that child gets acclimated to those standards, then eventually he'll meet those expectations. But you cannot live your dreams or what you did not do through your child. And that's what we see day in and day out, especially when it comes to sports. Now, I always use me as an example. I played basketball and I was pretty good at it. My son played basketball and he played baseball. Well, they used to tell me, PJ, your son's playing basketball. I know he's good. Yeah, he plays basketball. He was not going to kill you with a basketball. He'll play some defense and he'll give a pass or two. I was proud of him. But his thing was baseball. And I didn't play baseball, so I supported him. So I did not pass on what I did in my past as it relates to being a basketball player to him. You got to do this. We're going to do the training. Sometimes you just have to let a child find his or her way with the appropriate guidance. Hold them accountable, okay? All right.
Okay, we're going to take a moment to answer some questions, all right? Someone I keep forgetting, okay. Someone online has asked, what advice can you give for a grieving student? What advice can you give to a grieving student?
So before Shamika answers this question, I want to say from a school perspective, our school counselors are not always equipped to deal with those mental health type issues. The state of Alabama, the Department of Ed has done an excellent job with providing school districts with resources to hire mental health counselors and contract with different agencies to have individuals within the school system. but it is imperative that administrators, parents have that line of communication. Whatever you're seeing at home, that should be shared with the school so we can quickly identify how to assist that child. Because if we don't have that line of communication, we'll keep that child with a counselor, a school counselor, and they're just helping them get through the day. They're not addressing those mental health needs or those needs that truly need to be met. So the key is communication so we can get them referred and get them to the right people within the school system. So Shamika is going to be able to talk about that. But she answered it because school counselors aren't necessarily equipped for that. But we do, I know in my district, they have hired other outside agencies. Well, they're working with outside agencies, and we have mental health counselors come in and deal with that intense, with the intense counseling.
And so when we talk about grief, it does not have to be a death. It could be the fact that, maybe this school year the child is going to a different school where they lost friends. The communication won't be the same. It could be the fact that the parents have separated. That's a grief. It's a loss of, their normal home life. It could be the loss of a pet. Things that you might minimize could impact that child differently. So think about that when you talk to your children. It's not necessarily how was your day today. Was there anything that made you feel down? If you could change one thing about today, what would it have been? I notice you're not smiling as much today. Is anything making you sad? So think about the wording that you use, which leads me to the next point that Dr. Pruitt made. When you look at, from a clinical perspective, professionals, in the schools, counselors do an amazing job. I don't want to take away from that. Many of them are not clinically trained to address severe or more mental health concerns, okay? And so at that point, that counselor can be an introduction to the parents to connect them with the resources that might be more appropriate. And you can be a counselor, you can be a therapist, and you not specialize in psychiatric disorders, and you're gonna miss some things. It just is what it is. Spiritually, and I don't know where Pastor went, that's an excellent place to start as well. However, we've got to be realistic. Sometimes it's gonna take more than just talking to the pastor about it, praying about it, and I have to be careful because I do manage medications. And we as a people of color have got to realize in some cases, we need medicine. It is what it is. You can pick your friends, but you cannot pick your family. So you have no say-so in the way that your genetics are made. We tend to say, like with my daughter, I said, oh, you didn't get that from me. But realistically, she probably did, because, she got it from somewhere, so the gene pool mixes up. And medication-wise, I may have a mother that takes this medicine for anxiety. The dad takes this. Well, we try both with the child. And one of the most amazing things we've been able to do now is genetic testing. Mm-hmm. So it's a kit, just like a DNA kit that you see on Maury or whatever, Ancestry.com, you swab your cheek. It's done through a mental health prescriber, somebody that manages medications. And we get a report back. And it can actually show, I've actually had teenagers, the child needs to be on something completely different because they have their own genetic pattern, okay? It also gives support for when we get patients, that didn't work for me. So when that report comes back and it shows everything that we've tried is genetically indicated for you, then we know that's not a medication problem, that's a psychological problem.
One thing I can say, the first thing that can happen if your child and when your child may deal with grief is if they saw you deal with grief. Get that? If you're hiding it throughout their life and when it's time for them to deal with it, they're not going to have that blueprint on what to do. definitely tap into any resources. And the person who asked that question, if you would inbox me, I can send you a list of grief coaches that I know and grief counselors that I know that can definitely help that child. Does anyone here in person have a question for us? Okay.
Good morning. How has your parenting style adapted as your child has grown and developed in 2023?
I'll go up first. Okay, so my story is somewhat close to Cicely's. I was in my first year of college when I had my daughter. So my daughter is 23 years old, and she was the child that I had to do absolutely nothing for. She came home, she did everything the right way, she studied, she just knew what she wanted in terms of her educational journey. And then I have a 16-year-old, my children are 7 years apart, and let me go back. With my daughter, I was very busy. I was embraced in school, I was embraced in work, my support system. You know, it didn't bother her if I couldn't make a play or a meeting, as long as someone was there to support her, she was fine. But with my son, he needed to see his mama. He wanted to see me. For a long time, I handled my children the same. And I addressed behavior concerns the same, and I got 2 different responses every time. And every time, the responses, they just seemed like they were just going in opposite directions. And it seems as if when I matured as a parent, I began to see that I had to address the needs of my children differently. I had to be more hands-on with my son, more involved with everything that he had going on, and really focused a lot more of gentle parenting with him. I couldn't yell at him. I can't yell at him. He doesn't take that well. He shuts down, and it's nothing that I can do at that point. And so I've noticed those car ride moments, I can remember just like in hindsight, like, lady, you just act a fool, you know? And it's like now, well, you know, a couple of years since, you know, they've gotten older, and I'm looking back, it's so easy now, because Joseph, I don't do all of that fussing and I kind of just let him do his thing the way he wanted to do it in the morning time. See, I was so used to lotion up, do this, wipe your shoes off, and it was just chaotic. Yeah. But when I just kind of let him be who he was, about 5 years ago, everything just kind of changed. But for so long, I was just treating my children the same. And I think Epiphany made that comment about how she addressed her children differently. It took me a long time to understand that, but when I did it, I think they were happy. And it's like with your children, you may have one that is just super academically inclined. And when you're telling that child, you need to make all A's or you need to do this, then the other one, you may in turn create issues within that because they may not be capable of being that student. And so I think we have to address all of our children differently. And I do want to say this, when it comes to the school, and I've always, and Ms. Seaborn was one of my counselors, we have to take our children from where they are. Everyone does not come to us equipped to be the way that we want them to be. And so in this day and age, Joseph, I had to learn that we have to take our children from where they are and treat them accordingly.
I just want to encourage you, everything I say is going to be clinically. access resources that are available. I currently see patients out of state, Colorado, and their resources are phenomenal. Kids can have one therapist for this, play therapy, another talk therapist. They have individuals within the school system, and it makes the biggest difference. You know, a lot of that has to do with our Alabama politicians, so we need to vote as far as what funds we accept, federally, because we're shortchanging our children. And so with that being said, I looked at some statistics. Alabama was ranked in 2021 36 out of all the states for providing resources. We moved forward to 2022, we went down to 45. So as we're seeing need for resources increasing, we're not giving them what they need, and that's not beneficial to them. Also, when you access the resources, be receptive. When I took my daughter to therapy, one of the most disheartening things was she told a stranger that it was hard being my child. And not because of anything I did wrong, but because of what I did right. She said, my mom does this. Everybody know my mom do that. If you see me around church, I'm gonna be busy, because that's just me. And so she said that her teachers expected things differently. Her, whatever recreational things she did, she was always gonna be held to a certain standard because of who her mom was. And so don't get angry with the therapist. Don't get angry with, if they need medications and they tell us things that they haven't told you, because we're gonna ask differently. And so it's not the fact that they're hiding anything from you, it's the fact that the approach is different.
The word adapt, we have to be willing to compromise. And just because they're kids doesn't mean that they don't get a say-so in how things kind of operate. Deacon has a question, and then I have a question inside of our live. And Parental, I have a question for you about parents. All right.
Thank you. My question is something that Parental said, the standard is the standard, right? And all parents have their rules of the house. But the reality is that kids will say, well, everybody else is doing it. How do you deal with that? Because most parents are working 8-10 hours a day. We get home at 6 o'clock, kids in bed at 8. We spend 2 hours with them, maybe 3. But their peers are spending all day with them. How do you deal with everybody else is doing it?
Well, for me, I do have that 10-year-old who says everybody else is doing it. It's a trend, and it's something that he wants to do because everybody else is doing it. And I just really just say, you are an individual. You are not everybody else. You're special. You have a mind of your own. You are to do what Jackson needs to do. You have your own path in life. And I'll take him back to the Bible and everything. So, and just let them know you're created by God. We all are, but you are you. You don't have to do everything that everybody else does to fit in because you were born to stand out. So that's something I constantly remind my youngest about, because my older two, they have their own, they stand their ground. They're not the ones to do what everybody else does. But yes.
And remember the statement that I made earlier, reclaiming the minds of our children. That's one of the components that we have to look at. It doesn't matter what we do for the child, what we don't do for the child. Peer pressure and social media is always going to be in competition with parenting. Mm-hmm. It does not matter. So when you get to a point where you are having those consistent conversations with your child, and remember the key word is consistent. Today we're doing this, but next week we're doing something different. If you're consistent, then eventually they will follow suit. So there's no broad brush that we can use to paint how our children are going to be, okay? They're with their friends 8, 9, 10 hours a day. And then as parents, we have to create that work-life balance. A lot of districts allow parents to go to lunch with their children, pop in and visit. You have to take advantage, but the parent has to understand what his or her or both of their responsibilities are for that child.
I think he took most of the words right out of my mouth. But I do want to say sometimes it's easier for parents to give in. It's easier for parents to say, okay, you can go over your grandmama house or you can go over auntie house, because then that frees the parent up, right? So as parents, if this is a weekend that we've designated for you to do A, B, C, D, I don't care what everybody else is doing. This is what we're going to do. So I think earlier I said I matured as a parent. I did. Because those types of no answers became easier. You know, a lot of times we want to give in to our kids. We want to make our kids happy. But a lot of times it's not about you have to have such a structured household to where they feel like when they get out, they just got to be rambunctious and all over the place. It is the consistency of parenting. I think that is the number one factor in how we set our children up for success. Consistency.
And then here I come with that genetic aspect. So I stay like this.
So, Cicely, answer that question, and I want you to go directly into helping parents who are scared or don't know how to get their child evaluated. That was one of our questions online.
Okay. So along those lines, where we do evaluate, then I roll into what I'm going to say. So first of all, it starts with, like me when I was young, on every single little report thing, talks too much. Imagine that. So when you start having problems both at home and school, that's when we get of concern. What is the severity of the behaviors? Are they acting out because they're anxious and they're using that as a coping mechanism? Are they the class clown because somebody's picking on them? And that's how they cope. So lots of different things can go into their behaviors. But when we recognize it is a constant pattern, not following directions, making errors on their schoolwork, that's when it's time to take them in. And it may start with the school counselor. Now, as far as testing, I recommend that they go to a psychologist, okay? That's gonna show you a lot because it can be determined that maybe it's not ADHD. Maybe it is something else that we're dealing with. And so, two issues there. If they are treated by their pediatrician, that's a wonderful way to start. But when it comes to medications, get them to a specialist, a psychiatrist, because what we see then is if you misdiagnose or treat a child with a stimulant and they don't have ADHD, you're actually worsening the anxiety. You're making the problem worse because it's not there. And then if they do have ADHD, okay, the peer pressure, their responses are going to be different because their brain is different. It's not wired to necessarily stand up for themselves. They're going to be more impulsive, which makes them more likely to follow their peers because they don't have that decision making. They don't get to that concrete level of decision making without a little assistance, okay? And so from there, we have childhood behaviors that lead to teenage behaviors, maybe of drinking alcohol, using substances, because again, their issues haven't been addressed, which leads to later in life, it could be criminal behaviors because the impulsivity kicks in and they cannot stop. So I get into debates, heavy debates with a lot of my friends because when you read on social media, everything is not mental health. Well, basically it is, because by the time we make the headlines, there's a mental health issue, okay? And so if those things aren't corrected or addressed, then yeah, they're gonna make poor decisions. They're gonna drink alcohol, maybe have DUIs. They're gonna, again, turn to substances to treat their symptoms. So you can't hold a child that has a known deficit to the same standard as one that doesn't.
Okay, two more questions back here.
So my question is for Ms. Cicely. Our youngest, that's who we gentle parent. At what age, he'll be 5 Sunday, Jackson sometimes is angry and we can't figure out why. At what age do we? when do we get him help? Like, is he too young? Do he need play therapy? Like, how do we figure out, why are you getting so upset? Like, we're slowing down, asking him questions, like, what is it, buddy? When do we figure out, why are you angry at 4?
Now. And so you want to get in touch, start with their pediatrician. You know, Google search. Google is wonderful. It's a lot of good information out there, at least that you could start with. Now, you don't take them to the professional, ooh, he has XYZ, you know, let us decide that. But again, that's that impulsivity. It's that frustration because maybe mom wants me to do this, but I need more time. You know, I'm an adult with ADHD. I have to plan my day to allow extra time. My husband tell you, he watch me walk back and forth before we go somewhere, you know, because I'm more forgetful. And it takes me, I have to have a certain routine. That's why things are placed a certain way. I told Sister Seaborn, when I work, people are like, oh, she's so organized. No, it's written down because I'll forget it. And so, you know, as a parent, let him put his little daily routine. Take some of that frustration away. Ask him what makes him angry. But the biggest thing I could recommend is therapy now, because there's play therapy. They'll sit down, maybe things that he doesn't know how to express, he'll use the toys. And again, those persons are gonna ask the better questions to assess what's going on. Okay.
I'm gonna say something. In my field, I teach my staff, let the energy be. A lot of times we like to tell people, oh, well, sit down. Well, they're moving for a reason. That energy has to go somewhere. And I know the school system have them in a classroom, sitting down in the hallway, quiet. So sometimes when they get home, they have to just be everywhere because that energy has to go somewhere.
And don't take their sports away. Don't take that away. A lot of times parents, that's the first thing they want to do. Well, you won't act right, so you ain't going to play this. They need to exert that energy. Because if not, it's going to go back into school the next day. They're going to get in more trouble, have more behaviors because they're not allowed to exert that energy.
And so I just want to encourage you, Epiphany, because, you know, that was my KJ. And I can't stress enough the communication piece. His teachers, if he's turning 5, he's pre-K 4 now. Communication, constant. If you have to communicate with them on a weekly basis, because you need to see how his behaviors change from week to week. Whoever that director is of that program, they need to understand, because sometimes teachers don't fully understand and they need assistance with help navigating through how to deal with a child who's exhibiting those types of behaviors. But regardless of him not being able to express himself, allow him to express himself, and then when he finishes, give him that opportunity to tell you how he felt in that moment. But you can't just say that is not normal. He's a 4-year-old. So he's going through those growth changes. But I think the key is, like Cicely said, seek help now. And I can tell you from my own experiences, I tried to do it all on my own. And I feel guilty sometimes for not acting earlier. So you are at the perfect sweet spot to go ahead and address it now with those physicians and specialists that can get him going the way he needs to go.
Providers, we got to change our terminology. Nurse practitioners, there's a lot of us, so providers.
All right, here's the other question.
Thank you, Sister Cicely, for providing us with that information. So my question is, well, first you gave us that Alabama is ranked 45 with resources, and according to the CDC, we're ranked number 16 with over 180,000 plus teenagers that struggle with suicide, anxiety, and depression. So with all of the clinical resources that you provided us today, my question is, how have you all implemented a healthy God relationship with your children and helping them to build that relationship for themselves and not just because we go to church and we go to a new home?
Oh, you got some good points. First of all, it's National Suicide Prevention Month. So let's acknowledge that. The 10th is National Suicide Prevention Day. That's what, tomorrow? So reach out to somebody that you know, check on them, let them know they got a lot to live for, encourage them because you don't know what battles they may be facing. That's the first thing, especially the strong people. Because a lot of times I'm sure, we'll hide those problems, those issues. So let them know, hey, if you need me, I'm here, okay? We are seeing more and more suicidal thoughts in younger kids. I never knew until I started working in this role. You will have a 7-year-old come in and talk about how they have daily thoughts of hurting themselves. And it comes from nowhere. These kids might not have been exposed to any traumas. Again, it goes back to that genetic factor. And parents just don't understand, why? I'm giving them everything, we got everything, but why do they feel this way? They cannot help it. So you've got to address those things. What was the other part of your question? How do you implement a healthy God relationship? A God relationship? Well, first of all, we recognize that God can do anything. He's omnipotent. But we need to access some resources to help with that as well. So you encourage them. We keep scripture in their lives. Most parents, when you ask them what's the goal for their parenthood or their children, that my child will be happy, productive, and make a contribution to society. Now, we're different. The first word in ours is typically saved, So we keep that spirituality in them and constantly do positive affirmations. There are faith-based therapists and providers. I have to be very touchy because my faith is first and foremost. And so while being a nurse and then even entering into this role, I know what God can do. But I also know that He gave myself and a whole lot of people like me the knowledge, the desire to incorporate both of those things so that we can help individuals become the best. So I can't preach my faith to patients, but if they open the door, I'm gonna step in.
Parental, do not forget to remind me. I have a question just for you. Okay. That's going to transition us. Let's look online real quick, and then I have 2 more questions in the audience. What part do environmental plays in their behaviors? I want to answer this first. I believe that we must look at the environment first. Sometimes we act different depending on where we are. The situation, the people may stress you out a little bit. Sometimes I have clients where they come to our center and we have no behaviors from them. And I deal with people who are very aggressive, but when they go home, it's holes in their walls, okay? That's an environment issue. Because when they come with us, they're heard, they have choices, okay? They have somebody to talk to, they have things that they enjoy. But when they go back home, it's go in your room. No, you can't open the refrigerator. No, you can't get the phone. So now I'm punching the wall. I'm tearing this up. I'm hitting you. So I believe environment does play a role in some people's behaviors. You want to answer that one?
Yes, ma'am. Environment plays a major role in our babies' lives. I've seen children come to school constantly angry, and they mimic what they see at home. And I'm sorry to say, but that's just the truth. They may see mom and maybe a significant other, or mom and dad fighting. They'll come to school. They're sad, but they're mad at the same time. They want to fight the people who are around them, their peers, just because they don't know how to really express what they're feeling. They don't know, they're not coping well. They don't have those coping mechanisms. And that's something we really try to teach nowadays, coping skills. You have kids that come to school. I just watch my babies every day. Just this little one yesterday, She's new to the school, but I just watched her in the hallway, and I just asked her, I said, "Are you having a good day?" And she looked at me and she said, "No." And I was like, "Well, what's wrong? Come talk to me." She said, "Well, my stomach hurts." Now, me as a mama, like, "Did you go to the restroom?" Of course. And she's like, "I don't have to use it." And I was like, "Okay, well, did you eat lunch?" Because they were just coming from lunch. And she said, "No, ma'am." So she goes on, I pulled her aside and pulled her a little closer to me, and she tells me, "I don't want to eat the school lunch." And I tell my mommy, but she can't afford to give me that. I keep things in my office, food. So, of course, I fed her. But that did something to me. I'm never gonna judge a parent because I don't know their situation. When they send us their children, they're sending us the best that they have. And they're probably doing the best that they can do. So I fed her, and I didn't go to her mom and say, "Hey, she's not eating, what's going on?" I just said, "I'll pick up some things from the grocery store this week and I'll put them in my office. And I'll make sure she eats." None of the other students will know what's going on. I'll just make sure she eats. Because her parents probably can't afford certain things. And she doesn't want to eat the school lunch. So I'm just gonna make sure she eats. We've had a few kids like that. We've had a few kids, young men, who don't have their fathers there. And they don't know how to express that, "I need my daddy." They're just in a rage every day. It starts from not wanting to come to school, but your mom make you come to school. You come to school, "I don't want to go in the classroom, so I'm gonna put up a fight. I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to stay out of that class." So, and then we find out at the same time, mom is struggling. So these kids have so much on them. They come to school, they are burdened down, and they don't even know how to express it. So yes, the environment does play a major role in the behavior of our children, of the children that we work with constantly, and sometimes our own, if we're not taking, we're not trying to figure out, or we're not taking note on what's going on.
Real quick, everyone that is online, if you can for me, like and share, because you never know who's on your Facebook page that need this conversation.
I just wanted to add one thing to what Ms. Seaborn just stated. So what do we do when we recognize that the environment is affecting our students? So from a school aspect, we as counselors, as teachers, when we recognize those things, if there are programs that, most schools have programs where they recognize that our young men need mentoring. And I think we've recognized that here at New Home as well, and we're about to get some things going with that. But within the school, within the church, when we recognize that environmental issues are affecting our children, we have to respond. And responding, it looks like being present. It looks like what our youth department is doing on every Sunday basis. That's providing them another opportunity outside of the school day to get additional resources and get more love on top of the love that they've received at school, because there's no guarantee that they're going to get that at home. Moms work a lot of hours, dads work a lot of hours, so it is incumbent upon us as a community, as a church, as a school, to recognize when those environmental issues are going on and address those within those spaces for those children. And it just comes through those mentoring programs and opportunities for them to have more, even if it's after school programs. A lot of times people think they need to go to after school programs because they need math help or reading help. No. We have latchkey kids. These are kids that when they get home, there's no mom, There's no dad. I'm sure all of us know that when your kids, when you pick them up at 3 o'clock or 3:15, what's the first thing they say? I'm hungry. What we gonna eat? So you have kids, they don't have that to go home to. So schools, we put things in place from 3:30 to 5:30 or 3:30 to 6. And it's not necessarily always about reading and math. It's just to give them that opportunity not to be in that space alone. Okay.
Pernell?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, just real quick, we have a huge amount, a large amount of students who will go into a district and they do have issues. And just like Sister Seaborn said, the baby was hungry. And I know that tore at your heart to see a child hungry. But how do we support the educators that have to deal with these daily crises? Because again, we're all human. Now, I teach big folks, grown folks, right? Or taught. Sometimes
I'm gonna need you to stop because that's going into what else I want you to talk about. You like just going ahead of me.
I'm just saying, and we can revisit it. But those are, again, coping mechanisms because we're all parents. And so we have to be able to deal with what we're faced with on a daily basis as it relates to our children, and then go home and regroup and reorganize our thought process to be able to deal with our own children. And I'll stop there.
All right.
One point, Sister Epiphany asked about when do we get help? Immediately, when we notice these issues are occurring with our children. And I say that because then you come for an appointment and say, well, they've been missing school. So I'm thinking, a couple of days, maybe 3, 4. Well, when is the last time they went to school? And it's like 2 months before that. I'm not gonna write you an excuse and your child, you all an excuse for the child not going to school for 2 months and you've not done anything about it.
I have a question, 2 questions back here.
So mine is to kind of piggyback on what Joseph was talking about. So we have 2 children, and there's one that we have to gentle parent. But we were called to the school. Counselors there, people from downtown are there because one of our children made a statement that they wanted to take their life. So for us, it rocked us completely because y'all know we do everything for them. So we couldn't understand what we were missing when we got that phone call. And so then for them to say if the child had a plan that they wouldn't be able to come back to school until we got them evaluated. So we had to sit out of school for that day, and I'm crying, pastor's over here praying, and I'm just like, what is it? What is it? And so now we find ourselves trying to parent a little bit different than before we got that call. But here's the kicker. So sometimes we think our child plays on that because it could be something as simple as, didn't I tell you to take the trash out? Oh, I'm just going to kill myself. So what do we do in that instance where it is a serious matter? It was then and it still is now for them to make mention of that. But it's like, do we give in every time? Because when we talked about getting help, professional help, the child didn't want that. So what do we do?
Definitely mention those standards again. Yeah.
Well, there are 2 different phases of that. It's the ideation, which means they might say that they want to hurt themselves or they don't want to be here anymore. And then there's a plan when they can actively tell you, I'm going to do this to hurt myself. Now, when a child repeatedly says, I don't want to be here, or I'm going to hurt myself, the thing is to get them into therapy to figure out, why do you keep saying it? Why do we go from being angry or frustrated to that's the first thing that we say? Is it that they've heard that somewhere and they're kind of patterning that behavior? Is it something that they're watching on TV, TikTok, something that they're exposed to make them feel that that's an appropriate response, okay? But when we get to a plan, that's a whole nother level. And I admire the school system for being that, aware that we've got to do something, because if that child goes to school and hurt themselves, ultimately it's on them. No different than if you were to come see me and with children, and again, here I go devil's advocate, I'm gonna talk to that child alone. Parents have a fit. I paid that copay. Yes, you did. But from a clinical perspective, I've got to talk to them alone because I got to build rapport. Okay? And so when they then tell me one-on-one that they are thinking about hurting themselves and actually what they would use in their environment to do it, at that point, it is out of my hands. I let them know that certain things I have got to share with their parents. And so from there, I make a recommendation for them to have acute care. And I think that's what the school was alluding to. And I have parents, they agree to have the child. I tell them go straight to the ER. They can be assessed. Will it be an inpatient admission? We now have intensive outpatient therapy, which is a wonderful option. And by that, I mean it's more than you're going to get in a one-to-one therapy. It's more than you're going to get from an outpatient visit. It's a cross between that and actually being admitted to a facility. So they go for several hours of therapy, group therapy, individual therapy, medication management when needed. So that may be something that's required in those cases, so they could get a little bit more intense treatment.
So can I ask a question, Kier? I wanted to kind of piggyback off of Lady T. So what do we do when we feel, okay, they're okay now? We in that moment, we think, okay, we need to get therapy. But then 2 weeks down the line, everything is back to normal. How do you help? How can I get help as a parent to understand the importance of if I need to still take them?
Okay, so that's typically what happens. There are not enough of us as far as psychiatric resources. So when the child is acting out, you call, you try to get an appointment. It may be 3 months down the road. That crisis is over, everything is well, so you document, you do a timeline. Try to do a mood journal, behavior journal. Keep notes. Is there a connection to when they're acting out? Is it before something is going on at school, a church event that they're expected to do X, Y, Z? Or is it something internally, genetically, that they have no control over? And when we look at problems, we look for, is it recurring? And to what severity it is. That determines the level of treatment that you may need.
And I think it's important too, I know my son, I know his plan. So the techniques and the tools that was given to him, we know how that looks. And so we're his reminder if he's unable to get to his therapist. So if that therapist is able to give that plan, I think that's important for parents to have the plan and how it looks, what a routine looks like, or whatever it is they decided will be his decision to walk through his emotions.
And I forgot, Dr. Pruitt mentioned, what do I do? Number one, go ahead and schedule that appointment. I don't care if it's 4 months down the road. These behaviors are ongoing. So there'll be good days, there'll be bad days. One of the handouts that I put out there is a mental health continuum. Because a lot of people say, well, I'm over it. It's all well. Well, when that stressor, which is what you all are calling like environmental things occur, we have no control over those. We have no control over how the children will respond. That's why it's important to have ongoing therapy. If they're on medications, don't just stop their medicine. If you feel like it's not working, come in for an appointment. Be honest about what has happened between appointments. If you're not honest, we don't know what to do. And then don't take them off their medicine, disappear off the schedules, come back 4 months later, they done got suspended, they done punched up all the walls in the house. We can address those things as they occur. Do we need to go up on the medicine? Do we need to come down? One of the things, most common questions I get is, will they be on medicine forever? I wish I could answer that. Well, let me back up. All they want you to do is take all that medicine. Okay, I'm a they, and that is not true. Who of you goes to work every day and say, give me all the work, give me all the problems? Who does that? So for every medication that we prescribe, it requires more frequent visits. It requires more education, because not only are we treating the child, when the parent comes back in the room, I've got to talk to them about what the plan of care is. Then they got to call on speakerphone, auntie, she want to give her this. Wasn't that the medicine that such and such took, and XYZ happened? So then there's more teaching that goes on. So now all they don't want to do is just give medicine. That's not true. So consistency. If you find a provider that you don't necessarily mesh with, there are more. Don't give up.
I have 4 more questions, and we're 30 minutes before our time end. So each question, only 2 people respond. But if you do have a response, definitely write it down, and afterwards you can talk to whoever asked the question.
Hello. Hey, Dr. Pruitt. My question is for Cicely. Okay. So my child was angry. He started biting the minute he had teeth. And I'm talking about he would sharpen them and then he would bite. So then we took him to school, and of course he did it in school. And he was just really aggressive, but then really loving. Like, he hurt you, but he didn't want to hurt you. So he was really loving. So we had finally, after he had to get stitches a couple of times from doing stuff, I finally decided we'll get him therapy. And then he sees a psychiatrist and a therapist. At what point do we suggest or ask for the genetic testing? Because it's so different for me. And every doctor said like his diagnosis was inconclusive, but they treat him according to what he went in there for, so that he can function. He's super, super smart. But sometimes dealing with other people, he's aggressive and really aggressive. So at what point do we request that? Because I feel like that the medicine that he's been on is not really working for what I think, but that's not my level of expertise.
Good questions. So you want to, and I don't know what your relationship is with that provider, but let them know your concerns as far as the different patterns in his behavior. How long ago has it been that the medications were adjusted? And if you have concern, if they're the right medicine, you've got to go to somewhere that offers genetic testing. That's the first thing. And if they don't, just like you would with any other diagnosis, can I get a second opinion? Can you, the internet, you research what psychiatric clinics offer genetic testing near me, and you find, call, make an appointment. If your provider doesn't offer it, keep going to that person while you wait for that appointment. You've got to be advocates for your children. You've got to be. If you put forth as much effort as we do to get our hair braided and find that right outfit, you got to do the same thing for your kids.
Amen. All right, next question.
I gotta get up just in case. So, do you feel that animals are good for emotional support?
I do. Because with Jackson, he may be able to talk to that pet. And I know that sounds weird, but I get it. I'm a weird person, because I know what they're doing. So you may hear a conversation with him talking to that pet, and he's actually more communicative with that pet than he could ever be with a person, because he hasn't learned how to express that. The emotional pets can help them calm, relax, because if they're in a stressful environment, they can turn to that pet.
So he's asking because it was suggested to us when we got Jackson a dog, and everyone knows the Army is relocating us, and Jackson may not go back with us. So he's going with family for Jackson to be able to visit the dog. We've talked to Jackson about it, but I guess we're just worried because that's what he determined for him when we got Jackson. So we're just up in here. We don't know.
Okay, I have a question, because you have to let your pet, your family pet go. Is there something else, like a stuffed animal that he? Okay.
We sat him down. He told us his box of costumes and
Just curious, why can't Jasper go? Well, the reason I'm asking, because say that it were a situation that the rules don't allow. You could get those approvals if you go through the right channels. People will make exceptions. So a part of that advocacy, never let someone tell you your child can't have XYZ. Number one, show me why they can't have it. And then what documentation or support can I get to allow that?
So I just have a follow-up question. So in this situation, and I can only give what my opinion would be, but if I was having to deal with that, I would, because we don't know how this is going to affect him until you all get there, right? So I think you need to have a plan B in place. Maybe go ahead and start researching different shelters or different animal hospitals or something where maybe he can go and visit, where there's some dogs that resemble Jasper or whatever it may be. That would be my opinion as a parent, but I am going to let the provider answer that, because I think that's important.
So I'm for Jasper going. Y'all probably don't want to hear that, but because you've got to think of the long-term effects. Remember I talked about grief earlier? Okay, so think about all the transitions he's having. He got to move. He has to leave his familiar setting, and you gonna take his dog? That's a lot. So if any way possible, revisit that. Sit down and have a family discussion. What way? He's big. How could we work around that? Not to make light of your concerns, but really, remember I told you with my child, I would have done a lot of things differently, you know?
All right, next question.
I have a question and like a statement. And talking about the dog, I have 2 kids and they're 11 years apart. And my oldest had started suffering with very bad anxiety. And she wanted a dog. And I was so against it, but I had dogs growing up. And the first dog we got, it kind of, didn't work out. So she got another little smaller dog. And for her, that is so comforting. And she signed it up for emotional support. So when she goes somewhere or whatever, she can take the dog with her because she got him as emotional support dog. And I think that's very important. But to go back as far as my oldest is 21. And I'm recently divorced. This year will be a year. And I go back because it's like you try to hide from your kids when we talked about earlier as far as shielding them from conversations or things they see or whatever. I did that. We fussed, I tried to whisper. But when everything happened, it's like kids, even though you try your best to shield them, it's conversations I thought she never heard, but she heard. And she brought it to my attention. I was like, how do you know that? Because it was behind closed doors. It was supposed to be when you in the bed sleeping, but they heard. And so that kind of came back to me. And even though we think that they're fine, I mean, she's going through and had to hear that her parents getting divorced, and it was COVID. Didn't have a graduation, didn't have prom. Things that she wanted to do after she graduated, she didn't get to do. It didn't work out. And now she got all the anxiety. If she drive down a certain road, a panic attack come on. So it's like, what do you do? I'm an old school parent, but I try to live in the new school thing as well, because, sometimes we try to raise our kids how our parents raised us, but then have to back, because our parents back then just, or say whatever. But with her, or even with my youngest, it's like, okay, I try to listen. Some things I got out of hand. I tried to do the sit-down dinners. And then now we let life happen to us as parents till now I'm out of that. I don't sit down and have dinner with my kids like I used to. I'm a huge family person. So I try to incorporate it, but we don't do things like my oldest don't hang with me as much as we used to. So I guess my question is like, I'm the type of parent some people say the kids should have their own privacy. I believe in that. But when I notice things going on, I go snooping. And I will like, okay, what's going on? See if there's anything in their room that they can hurt themselves or have them been hurting themselves or things that they have jotted down. You know, their fears, their issues. So I try to address it without them knowing. You know, because you don't want to lose their trust and let them, you know. So I guess my question is, so as a parent, how do you go by when you find out information to try to get them help without them knowing, to bring up a topic, even though you have asked questions before, but they don't want to talk about it? Like, do you suggest counseling as parent and child, or what?
Okay, I know you said, now correct me if I'm wrong. You said you've gotten so far away from the sit down dinners and it's not too late to go. It's never too late to start it again. I know that's the case. We get so busy, wrapped up in our daily lives, we just going. Find ourselves eating in the room or on the couch in front of the TV by ourselves, but it's not too late to start that again. That way you can have those conversations. Let your child know. I just always say be upfront with them. You know, they may not like it, but be upfront with them. My kids, my adult daughter, she was upfront with me about a lot of things, like just this summer and last summer. It hurt for me to hear it, but it changed some things for me as a parent, the way I parent them. Because as Kim talked about earlier, you have to parent differently. Every child is different. My oldest and my youngest are totally different. Sit down, tell them your concern. You know, I see this, I see you, you're different. You know, something's not right. I'm your mom and I know my child. Just be upfront with them. And always let them know, no matter how bad they may think a situation is, they can come talk to you. Your door is always open. At first, they may not be as comfortable, but if you continue, the word this morning I've been hearing is consistency. If you're consistent with telling them that, it's gonna finally hit. I need to go to my mama. And knowing you personally, I know you are close with your child, with your children. So keep telling her, you know, I'm seeing this, and even your baby. I want you all to always know that I'm here. I may not always understand what you may be going through or what you're saying, but I'm gonna listen to you and I'm gonna try, because sometimes it takes us as parents processing. We have to process because we're human. And what we hear sometimes, it hurts to hear it, so it's taking us aback, and we have to just kind of process those things. Don't stop doing what you're doing. Don't feel bad for things going in another direction. You can always bring it back, one day at a time.
I'm going to make a quick point, then Dr. Pruitt wants to say something. You answered your own question. Start with family therapy. Present it in a way, hey, y'all, you know, I know these are things that we went through. You're going to make me cry now because I'm a Cancer, I'm a tear baby. So I know we had these struggles as a family, and it's taken a toll on me. Would you guys be willing to help me process through this? And then that professional can answer those questions. You can communicate with the therapist, counselor, whomever, what your concerns are, and that person will bring it into the family session. We have a lot of more options as far as therapy now. You can get telesessions where they are in the comfort of their own home. So it's not the fact of, am I telling these people all my deep, dark concerns, but I can do it in the comfort of my home, okay? You have to set boundaries as to what the expectations are as far as being home. You can't stomp off and go to your room. You know, I need you to participate. But that does take some of that stress. You mentioned she has social anxiety. That'll take a little bit of that off. Okay, and you're doing good. You're doing great.
And I think as parents, you know, we have certain emotions when it comes to our children. You know, I have certain emotions when I'm dealing with my son, and I have certain emotions when I'm dealing with my daughter. And I think for me, this summer was an eye-opener when my daughter pointed out some of my flaws. So as parents, we have to understand we have flaws. And when our children tell us, you know, how they feel, we have to be open to hearing them. And not only open to hearing them, but open on working on those things that they have shared with us that, you know, we thought we were doing everything right as 21 and 22-year-olds working, going to school, trying to finish, trying to get started in our careers so they can have decent lives. And we thought that it, you know, a lot of things were okay. But this summer, to have her to tell me some of those things, it just helped me put a whole lot of things in perspective. And I think as parents with children in that age group, it's a different emotional roller coaster because they're on the cusp of being, they're coming out of being teenagers, young adults. They're about to be adults, you know, now. And so for us, we're so used to having control over everything.
Release the control.
So now we're in that stage where it's time to let go. And so a lot of times we want to continue to do things the way we've always done it. And I think I had another experience for Thanksgiving. I mean, I was hot because Kaya hadn't made it home the day before Thanksgiving. And in college, you come home the week before Thanksgiving, right? Because everything. But she was in her own apartment, she was working, and she got off work and she came home the night before. And I was just boo-hoo crying. But she had to tell me, Mama, I'm an adult now. I have a job. I can't take off. I had to work through the day. But it was up until that moment in this summer that I realized that a lot of my emotional stress is because my daughter is just shifting into an adult. And so when you have kids that are 7 and 9 years apart, we dealing with two sets of emotions. So I just want to encourage you, and hopefully, you know, with that family therapy, there'll be an opportunity for you all to get that relationship back tight.
Let me just real quick, two things. You've taken the first step, you know, acknowledging that you can't do it by yourself, okay? None of us can do it by ourselves. So it's okay to ask for help. And I think everything that we talked about today, it all came back to it's okay to ask for help because we need others, insight, professional opinions, and experts to be able to get us where we need to go. And the last one is, all right.
What that was. I did not do that for you, I promise.
The last one is always try to maintain your emotions, your emotional composure, because things can get intense real fast. And you know, people of color, you know, we're very emotional, and sometimes we make decisions based off of our emotions. So maintain the emotional composure and always ask for help because we don't know it all.
All right, and I have to ask this question because Deacon Rollins is on this live. I think he asked it about 6 times. So I better address it before he see me tomorrow. I guess the simple way, do we still spank our kids? And if all of us can answer that, and then the last thing we're going to end on is, I dealt with something. I have a friend who's an amazing therapist, and she's always talking about the gentle parent and, how we make our kids feel. And so I asked her one day, I said, but how do they make us feel? I was like, we're always concerned about them, and we should. I said, but when do we have these discussions with our kids that what you are doing is causing maybe my reaction? What you are doing is causing me to feel a certain way. And I think that goes to just how do we cope in times when maybe our kids aren't behaving or ungrateful, because there are ungrateful kids in the world. May not be yours, but there's somewhere out there that we have ungrateful kids. So we're going to ask the question. All of us will answer, do we still spank our kids? What's our professional view on it, spiritual view on it as well? And then if you can just end with how can parents cope with ungrateful kids?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I have a bonus daughter that she's 15, my son is 16, and my daughter is 23. So I don't spank them, no. When they were smaller, my bonus daughter, I didn't never have to spank. Kaya, periodically. KJ, periodically. I just didn't do a lot of spanking as a parent or whooping. And I think for me, that's because I believed in that line of communication and expressing my expectations. And did I have to sometimes? Yes. And was my mama mad at me a lot of times because I didn't? Yes. But I think it's just a personal preference with what a person wants to do. But I still believe you have to understand and know your children. Will a whooping help, or will it affect them, or will it create an environment that's not conducive for your home? And so the times that I did feel that I needed to spank, it just created chaos. And I just didn't like how that felt. So did I spank occasionally? Yes. But now with teenagers, I do own my space, and sometimes I have to stand up, So, I think they have to know that you will address the situation in a firm manner. And so that's my position.
So yes, my child got spankings, but knowing now, listening to Brother Purnell, a lot of that was out of frustration. I got to leave my job because you over there cutting up. I have to take off work. I was only income. So a lot of that I would have done differently now as far as addressing her behaviors or things that were going on. From a clinical perspective, think about the long-term aspect, okay? The emotional trauma that I talked about earlier, how that will impact them as young adults and going on into adulthood. The Bible speaks to fathers, and I can't quote it exactly, but you should not provoke your children. And so therefore we do need to take that, Joseph is gone, but that spiritual aspect into our parenting as well. What did we do that could, affect their behaviors? And am I spanking them for I don't like to use that word right and wrong, but is it warranted what I'm spanking them for?
As far as my three, yes, I did when they were younger. But my oldest two, I can count on one hand how many times I had to spank my oldest two kids. Now, my 10-year-old, that's a different thing. I probably run out of hands, toes, and everything else. However, as he's gotten older, we don't do spanking. We talk, because he is a child they all are children you can talk to. Now, I notice with my boys, they hate for me to be the one to have to talk to them. It's like, it breaks my heart to know I disappointed my mom. So talking to my kids is better than spanking them. So no, I don't do any spanking anymore.
All right, so I promise you, I'm trying not to make this a political answer. I'm trying not to. But see, here's the thing. So right now, the days that we're living in now, we have parenting or parents versus social workers, right? And some agencies don't believe in spanking a child. They'll tell you that up front. But as a parent, how do we maintain control? Because sometimes that child really needs to have that stern, talking to where you get real close to in their ear and you put your lips in their ear. So some children do warrant that, right? And depending on the severity of the situation, I just believe that we always use the Bible as our lamp to guide our paths. So spare the rod, spare the child, right? So if we want to bring it all the way back to the biblical sense. However, at that point, what are you compromising? Then agencies that I've contracted for, no, you can't say that. You can't say you spank the child because we don't believe in it. So you're always somewhat dealing with some type of component as it relates to that. Now, I'll go back. Dr. Julia Hare, back in 2007, she was on Tavis Smiley's show, The State of Black America. And she stated that from an educational standpoint, the educators were trying their best to educate the child, did everything that they were supposed to do, and then they had obstacles and hurdles because of the principal, the pressure that they were receiving from the principal. So the educators were afraid of the principals were afraid of the superintendents were afraid of the school board were afraid of the parents were afraid of the children, and the children weren't scared of nobody. And so we at a point where that's how we have to be able to address our children in this day. We have to stay cemented in our beliefs on being able to rear strong children in our community. Now, go ahead.
And remember, you can't whoop some stuff out of them.
Right.
Think back to, I'm always going to go back to those genetic qualities that they may possess. We live in a culture where there are sexuality concerns. Out of your frustration, you cannot beat your child into being who it is that you feel that they should be. And so I just wanted to address that, because that can cause, again, emotional trauma, sexuality, misbehaviors, or acting out in ways that they weren't allowed to express.
And I think it just depends on, like Kim said earlier, knowing your child, knowing their personality. I'm not going to tell you I don't believe in spankings, because I got some when I was little, and I think my mom, I turned out pretty good. Yeah. But it depends on the child. So spank if you must, but my first thing I've learned is to just talk to your children, find out what's going on, and go from there.
And I'll close with but I'll end my segment with two coping mechanisms that we all can use and incorporate in our daily lives. The first one is take responsibility for the situation, okay? So you've got to be able to figure out what that looks like, why we're at this point. Own the problem, all right? And the last one is engage in problem solving. So you can't go in pointing the finger at the child or the educator or the person.
Awesome. Did y'all enjoy yourself? Okay, awesome. Online, they were definitely active, so I do appreciate people tuning in. Mr. Derek, if you could put the church email in the chat. What I would like for you all to do is to send us some feedback. Also, let us know what topics you would like to hear next, and when do you guys think we should do the next talk. We do kind of plan, try to do it maybe a picnic or a coffee shop or just different avenues and environments. So definitely send us some ideas via the church email. Pastor also wanted me to make sure everyone knew you guys can join us tomorrow here at 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. for service. If you do not have a church home, New Home is definitely the place you need to be. We embrace, we empower, and we employ through many different avenues, not just workshops like this. We're all parents, and we can learn from each other. The village that we are able to build with workshops like this will allow us as parents to first be reminded that you are not alone, that someone else is having the same issues. We will also see that you're not doing a bad job. Look at you, you got this. You showed up today, not just for your child, but for yourself. I pray that you all have learned something. I pray that we're able to help connect you, continue with resources, and just throughout the years, anytime that you're having issues. But at this time, we will end with a prayer. And those that are in service can stand. Thank you, professionals. You guys did awesome. Let's bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, God. We thank you for putting upon our hearts, God, to meet the needs of the people that serve at this particular location, God. The need of knowing how important it is for us to raise kids that are healthy, that are whole, and that are God-fearing. God, we just thank you for, first of all, giving us the best examples in your word on what good parenting, what good love looks like. God, we also thank you for putting upon people's hearts to go into professions that can help our kids when we cannot. That are there in their schools. That are there on the field when they're playing sports, God. Because we cannot raise our kids alone. It takes a village, God. God, give us a heart that we're not ashamed, that we're not so bottled down with guilt, that we know how to ask for help. God, let us know when it is time to spank, when it's time to put the child in corner, and when it's time just to give the child a hug, God. Because we know that anytime that we need an answer to something, we can go to you, God. So above all other resources, we ask that you be the resource in our home. You be the resource in our parenting skill, God. God, right now we are asking for prayer for any child that is thinking about harming themselves, God. Remind them on this very moment that they are loved, they are wanted, and they have a purpose, and they are needed on this earth for this very moment, God. God, right now we are rebuke any of Satan's tactics, God, to take our kids. He does not have our kids, God. Our kids belong to you, God. They will live out the purpose that you have given them. We just thank you, God, for giving us the role to be their parent. Continue to keep us, continue to bless, God, and continue to give us the things that we need, God, to continue on. In your son, Jesus' name we pray, amen.